Hey guys and gals, Malkuth 1974 back at you with another episode of our Apollo Duna missions. Today we're launching a couple different vessels, and we're actually covering two separate missions that are going on right now. So below, in the big part of the screen, we have the Apollo crew pod. Its destination is Duna. Have 3 Kerbals on it. I actually have this specially set up. I have 1 pilot and 2 engineers because I want to train my engineers to be level 3 so they can fix that important wheel issues that if they ever do occur on Duna. So this is just a flyby or an orbit of Duna without actual any landing with a Kerbal inside. Up in the top left hand corner we have the Duna Space Station Core. That is an actual separate mission that is part of the Duna missions, but all it requires you to do is put an emergency resupply station in orbit around Duna in case the regular Duna mission ever requires it. And of course in the upper right hand corner we have the Duna lander. This is a separate vessel that I'm launching on my own, paid out of the space agency's own pocket, technically, to do a secondary test of landing this lander on Duna without any Kerbals and making sure that it can actually get off of Duna without any issues. So there you go. That's the basic premise of this whole area. All these vessels were launched at around roughly the same time. You'll be able to see it here in a few seconds, but all 3 vessels are arriving at vastly different times at Duna, and for the sole reason of giving me enough time to set up the orbits and all that stuff. And when I'm talking about a vastly different amount of time, I'm talking about we have a separation of almost somewhere around 200 days. Now if we look right here, we can see that the other 2 vessels, that's the lander and that's the actual space station, they're already on their way. You can still see them in Kerbal orbit. And right now I'm just setting up the Apollo crew pod to actually get to Duna, and you know, it's working out good. Trying to do all this stuff at once is kind of a pain in the butt. But to make things a little bit more difficult, about 300 days before all of this, we must go back in time now. I'm cueing bad sound effects. 300 days before this, I launched a probe. Now, this probe is called the Voyager 1 probe. There is another mission and mission controller that is part of the Mariner program. If you guys didn't know that, the Mariner program is the American space program that was launching probes to the different planetary bodies around everything. But before we get to that, let me explain what's going on the screen right here. I had a little issue, and that issue was I completely screwed up my fairings. And if you didn't know this, that if you ever try to launch a vessel without actually breaking the fairings off, your vessel will not work. It's a bug in Kerbal Space Program. It's a really annoying bug, and it cost me the very first Voyager probe that I had. It actually survived re-entry, which is completely crazy. Again, that's probably a bug in 1.02. Re-entry heat really doesn't mean much right now at all. But yeah, so the first Voyager probe kind of went ploop into the water, and poop, something else just flopped and flied in there with it. But okay, so now on to Voyager 2, Destination Jool. So anyway, Voyagers were part of the Mariner program. Actually, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 were actually called Mariner 11 and Mariner 12, but they were reclassified into the Voyager programs. Actually, they were reclassified into, I believe it was something around the Mariner Voyager project, and then it was actually just changed to the Voyager probes. And these probes were sent out to go to Saturn and Jupiter, and actually the mission was extended to go to Uranus. Oh God, why does everybody have a problem with that name? And Neptune. The basic grand tour of the outer planets. And if you guys didn't know, how did they achieve this back in 1977? There was a special planetary alignment where the probes could take advantage of the different gravity assist of the different planets to actually get to Saturn and Jupiter and all that stuff. So That's how that happened right now. And of course, Voyager 1 at this moment is the farthest away man-made object that we've ever made that is farther away than anything else. And Voyager 2 will actually be following it pretty soon, I believe in 2016, to be entering that same sphere of that Voyager 1 is in. So yeah, it's all an interesting idea on how all this works. Both probes are still working. Both probes still have not a huge crew of people actually watching, but they are still an active mission for NASA. But anyway, here we go. So sending the probes off to Jool. That's the way that's working. But of course, we can't sit here forever and worry about Jool, or can we? Yeah, we can. No, we gotta go. So back in forward in time. So that was 300 days before all this. Now we're actually ahead, probably another 250 days from when we originally. Are we all keeping track of all this? Because I'm not. If you guys look every once in a while, I do have a list of. Except here, why didn't I put it here? I don't know. I'll put it there in a second. But anyway, there you go. So we have a list of what these vehicles are, what they're doing. Since we are technically tracking 4 vehicles in one episode in 25 minutes, I figured I'd just throw the names of where they are and what we're doing. So what we're doing right now is that we're getting into an orbit of Duna with our crew pod. And the crew pod is actually, believe it was the last one to launch, but it was the first one to get to Duna. It's just the way I set up it's just the way I set up the burns. I don't know why I did it that way. It actually worked out well. This is gonna partially complete one of the missions in here, that is get the crew to Duna orbit. Once I put the space station in orbit of Duna, that will also completely complete another mission. So that'll be good. Getting there. Most people like to do a what they call an aero burn, or using the atmosphere of a planet that has an atmosphere to slow you down and to actually get you into an orbit, all in the hopes of saving fuel and all that. I got into the habit of not doing that ever, because I always seem to have enough fuel to just about do this 8 times. So I just usually use a regular burn, well above the atmosphere of these planets to put me into orbit, and I still have usually plenty of fuel left to think about what I can do with that vessel afterward. But what are we gonna do there? I mean, that's all up to you. Of course, if the actual heat stuff worked correctly in 1.0, doing that type of burn would probably burn your vessel up unless you had heat shields. That's why I just like to do it this way. I don't have to worry about the heat shields issue. And hopefully in the future, if this video is being viewed by somebody in the future, which it technically is right now, we're in the future, but actually in the past, if that makes any sense to you. It doesn't to me. Maybe this doesn't all make all that sense. You'd be like, what are you talking about? You'll burn right up if you go into Duna. Well, that wasn't the case in 1.02, so be quiet. Stop yelling at me. It's just the way it is, okay? So here we go. So this is just here we go. We're gonna show all 3 vessels entering Duna orbit all together. Again, the main screen is the pod. Upper left-hand corner is the station core, and the upper right-hand corner is the Duna lander. All clearly marked. I even gave you the days. So it took 275 days for the crew pod to get there. It took a lot longer for the other 2 to get there, but the crew pod got there first. 275 days. We're there. We're going to do a bunch of science once we get into this orbit, and everything's going to be a-okay. I actually remember to put lights on this thing, which is pretty amazing for me. But hey, who needs lights when? Wait, yeah, we all need lights. But there you go. So Apollo crew pod arrived at Duna, just setting up my orbit, for we can kind of orbit around Duna for the next 444 days when the next window opens up. Again, I use the Kerbal alarm clock. All it does is it gives me the best opening to do a burn to any of these planets. Any planet you want. You can set up any planet you want. I've always used Kerbal alarm clock. This is kind of a new feature they added, I believe, in 0.90. and I like it. It works good. It does work good. Of course, you have to figure out how to do your burns on your own. There's a few other programs out there which will do it for you. But I believe I've gotten to the point where I actually forgot to put an antenna on this thing. I thought I did put an antenna on it. I guess I didn't. Oh well, so we'll actually have to wait until we get back to Kerbin to release some of this science to complete one of the objectives for the orbit of Duna, which is fine. Which is just fine. Nobody's gonna yell at us, I don't think, unless you're yelling at me right now for some unknown reason. So there we go. We're just sending out some of our engineers out there. I'm going to actually do this twice because I want to get their crew experience up as much as possible. So everybody will be doing an EVA. And of course, again, this is just to get everybody up to at least a level 3 candidacy. You can see right here, I am showing what I need to do to finish some of these missions and in the contracts. Again, we're kind of jumping around from the past to the future. Right now, as this is being shot over Duna, this crew pod is the only Kerbal vessel that there is there. Even though I just showed you a little bit of future clip of the other two arriving there, these guys are sitting there happily enjoying their self. Now, if you look at this Apollo crew pod, you can see it actually has a extra part added to it. There's no need for it, but I don't like the idea of having these poor Kerbals stuck for 440 days in a small pod. So I added the crew cabin to this to make things a little bit easier for them, because I'm a very benevolent leader, dictator, whatever you want to call me. So let's just jump ahead into the future a little bit more. And let's jump right to the next important part of this mission, and that is testing and making sure, validating this lander can land on Duna and take our poor little Kerbals back into space before they can get home and do all that. I'm kind of setting up the parachutes right here, just thinking that I got a feeling that if I keep these at default values, this is not going to work, because I know this for a fact, because I've done this before many times, and well before this is the first time I've been here in 1.0. In the past, if you didn't fix your parachutes, you would crash and burn pretty damn quick. So I set up a landing site that was relatively flat on an equatorial plane. I'm actually traveling in a retrograde orbit of Duna right now. Most of my craft are, except the space station. Now, if you guys are wondering why the times seem to be completely different from the Duna lander and actually the space station compared to the Apollo crew pod by quite a big margin, that's because I actually launched. Now, if we can keep track of all this, like I said, I can't. The Apollo crew pod was launched and directly went to Duna. The actual lander pod and the station were launched a year before the actual Apollo crew pod was launched, just because I was bored and I didn't want to sit there doing the fast forward thing for ever and ever and ever on the time acceleration, I should say. So that's why there is such a huge difference in the times. Not a big deal. They just spent about a year and a half in Kerbin orbit waiting to actually launch to Duna. So I'm just going to test a few things out here and make sure they work. Landing on Duna is quite an experience, and it's even more an experience when you have to do more of a... If you land one thing, that's one. I can land anywhere I want. But when I need to land a... say the colony vessel lands first, and then I need to land the crew pod next to the colony vessel, that makes things a little bit more difficult. But there's a trick to it, and I will teach you that later when we actually get to that phase of the mission. So now, here we go. Taking off. So my worries about the engine were unfounded. They actually do seem to work relatively well. I wouldn't say they were great. I wouldn't say this is the best lander on the planet. It is large, probably way overcomplicated. I'm just trying to get used to these engines, these new engines, and whatever. Remember, this can hold 3 Kerbals, so it's just not the regular crew cab there. There's actually a smaller crew cab above it that holds the 1 extra Kerbal. So that little lander actually has quite a little bit of wiggle room for our Kerbals to move around in. And me being the benevolent leader that I am, like to make it so, as I would say, Star Trek lingo. So let's get these guys going. We'll get this up in space. Everything seems to be going well. All of these missions seems to be going off without too much of a hitch. Of course, I have quite an experience of doing this many, many times. My previous games, I actually had a colony on Duna where I launched and landed with, by the way, using resources like oxygen. I had to figure out all the oxygen stuff. Of course, in Kerbal Space Program 1.0, there is no oxygen requirements. It is just, Kerbals can breathe forever for whatever reason that is. But, it is a space game and not so much a space simulator. Even though it does get some stuff close, it is not quite true to life on how things would really work. So, not having to worry about food, oxygen, what to do with waste is quite a good benefit for us playing a vanilla, well, I'm not really playing vanilla, but a normal version of 1.0 without any sort of survival gear or resources that we might actually need. Did I just talk for that long and not breathe? Holy crap, that kind of hurt. Let me take a breath. Whew. Just joking. So, let's move on yet again. Now we are kind of moving into the future again. Burn home after 400 plus days in Duna orbit. That is not including the actual getting to Duna. So these guys have been in space for a long time. There's been a lot going on. Try to remember, I have multiple missions going on at the same time. We got 3 vessels right now, and you can actually see them crisscrossing right now in orbit. At this point, when we are leaving our Duna space, or Duna itself, there's many vessels just flying around. You can see the lander over there. You can see the space station rotating around, and everything seems to be going a-okay. I am going at a retrograde orbit of Duna. That's because I entered Duna wrong, and once you do that wrong, you pretty much have to just go with it. You don't want to waste too much fuel undoing that mistake, so I just kept it the way it was. The space station is actually in a prograde orbit, so I'm not too worried about that. The next time we come back, we'll make sure everything's prograde and make sure everything's great, and we won't have any worries there. Well, at least we won't have too many worries, I would say. At least I'm hoping we don't. I mean, that is the plan, right? I would say so. So if you guys are having any issues trying to get to Duna, just watch my moon video, and that will give you an idea of how to burn or how to set up your maneuver nodes to get to other planetary bodies. The way I do it is, look, here I go, I'm taking more science. I mean, it's just, maybe I'll make a separate video later about it, so I won't talk too much about it, but it's not all that difficult. You just have to make sure that you burn correctly. So, what's going on now? Yeah, we're still in Duna. There's Duna. If you look at everything, what I'm doing is I'm sort of fixing any issues that my first burn did not complete, or any mistakes I made in my burn. So, if you actually do one of these burns, the chances of getting it right the first time are usually slim to nothing. So, there we go. So, now we're going to do another jump. At the same time that all this is going on Duna, believe it or not, Voyager 1 finally gets to Jool. Now, wait, how is that possible? Well, remember, Voyager 1 actually launched 300 days before any of the vessels even launched to Duna, if you want to actually think about it that way. If you want to keep track of the time, I do keep the Kerbal alarm clock open up there, and you can see what year it is and what day it is, for you know what time it is and what's going on. Another thing I was thinking about is, Maybe I should start naming these vessels, like giving them names. And if you guys can come up with any kind of names you want to name them, that'd be great. Like the lander, the space station over in Duna, the next probe, the next actual landing, or the vessels going to the landings. You know, you guys have any ideas? Just, you know, pop an idea down there in the comments and give me a thumbs up or something, or what you would like to call it. Maybe we'll name it that. But at any rate, what I am attempting to do here is quickly get this probe into an orbit that is above all of the moons of Jool. And the reason I'm doing that is because this particular contract requires me to visit every single moon that is on a part of Jool. And as you can see, we're kind of coming into orbit now, and you can see the moons actually circle around Jool, which is pretty damn spiffy if you ask me. I think it's great. That's why I did this shot, for you guys can see it. There's Jool, it's nice green, massive giant size, I guess, in relativity to a Kerbal. And you can see its little moons circle around. I just thought that was great. I actually watched this for a while. Everything's on fast forward on post editing, but why did I choose this design for Voyager, which looks nothing like the actual Voyager vessels? I don't know. I was just playing around, throwing things together, and that's what I came up with. Obviously, lots and lots of solar panels, because we're very far away from the sun, and believe it or not, 1.0 plus of KSP has actually improved the way solar panels work. So the farther away you get from the sun, the less your solar panels are going to work for you. And I think there's some kind of heat element involved in this too. It doesn't seem to be affecting me right now because I have so many solar panels on there. But at any rate, all these solar panels are enough to keep this running. Now I'm going to do a bunch of science and start releasing all of this to go to, obviously, Kerbin, for I get the science from it. You can see the satellite dish on the front of that is quickly sending everything that we need to send to get things going. And look at that, we're already getting pretty close to our time to end this video, so we'll go back to this later. We can't do everything in one episode, so we'll get back to our Voyager 2. I should actually call it Voyager 2 now, because technically it's the second Voyager we launched. But we'll just jump right back to our Kerbals. After 2 years and 265 days in space, they have finally arrived back at Kerbin. And I can tell you right now, everything went fine. So you can shut the video off. No, I'm just joking. No, it did actually go fine. But the plan worked. Remember, in the beginning of the episode, I have a pilot and 2 engineers. Well, every single one of these guys came out as level 3 Kerbals now. All you really have to do to train your Kerbals is to get them into orbit of Kerbin, land them on another body in Kerbin's sphere like the moon, and plant a flag. That is the highest you can get them, as I think of. Maybe it's changed in 1.0, but pre 1.0 that was the highest you can get them. The only way you can get them to level 3 is to leave Kerbin's sphere of influence, which actually jumped them up to level 3. All you needed to do was that. But I had the added benefit of sending them to another body and doing an EVA and doing all that, which adds a little bit more. They didn't quite get to level 4, but they got quite a lot of points in here, so that's how it is. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. Next time, we'll be landing with our Kerbals on Duna, going back to the Voyager probe, and learning a little bit more. So, guys, have a great day, and we'll see you later. This is Malkuth, 1974. See you later.